Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning. It is April the 28th, I believe. We're going to be doing our Zoom meeting in just a little while at 10 o'clock this morning. And it's crazy hair day, so I'm going to do something with my hair before then, although it's already looking a little crazy since it hasn't been cut in quite a while. So today what we're going to be doing is adding and subtracting some fractions. I know some of you had a little bit of trouble with the last lesson, so I will be getting with you individually to give you a little extra help on that. But just for the sake of continuing on with our schedule, today we're going to be adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. That means the bottom number of the fraction is not the same. And before we can add or subtract, we are going to have to make equivalent fractions, but we will have to force them to have a like denominator or the same denominator before we can add or subtract. Because we know that in adding or subtracting fractions, the bottom number must be the same and it stays the same. We don't add or subtract the bottom number. Only the numerator of the top number would be added or subtracted. All right, so let's just kind of go through the example that they have at the top of the sheet here that you should be looking at on my screen. So the example they give you is we are going to have 1/3, and we're going to add to that 1/6. So we have 1/3 of something, anything. We have 1/3 of a cup of milk, and we're going to add to that 1/6 of a cup, and we need to know how much total that is. So we can't add until we have like denominators. So we should remember, hopefully from lessons that we did when we were together in school, we can make equivalent fractions, meaning an amount that is equal to 1/3, but I can change the denominator. And when I say equal to, I mean proportionally, they are equal. So if I cut my pizza into 3 pieces, 1 out of 3, and then I cut another pizza the same size into 6 pieces, 1 out of 3 would be the same size as 2 out of 6. And hopefully you may remember that from doing the fraction circles that we had, that I know they were a pain to put all back together, but we could show how if the circle was divided into 3 parts, and we shade 1 out of 3, and then we take the same size circle and divide it into 6 parts, and we shade 2 out of 6, that they are in fact the same amount. So here they have changed 1/3 into 2/6. Now why 2/6? Well, we want to find a common denominator, same number in the bottom of both fractions. And we can use any common denominator, but the easiest way is to find the lowest or the smallest common denominator. So that means a multiple of 6 and a multiple of 3, and we want to find the lowest one. Okay, so some of you that are really quick with your multiplication facts, you may already see it 6. What if you don't? Well, I'm going to show you how you can figure that out without a calculator. And even if you don't know your multiplication facts, which I want you to start memorizing, so I may assign that as work to just be writing them out. But in the meantime, for right now, I'm going to pull up a piece of paper like this. And I'm trying to find the lowest common denominator or the lowest common multiple of 3 and 6. So I'm going to abbreviate lowest common multiple. You'll see it a lot of times as just the LCM. And when you hear multiple, it sounds like multiply. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to take 3 and we're going to find the multiples of 3 by just multiplying it. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. And even if you don't have these memorized, 3 times 4 is 12. I usually do 4 or 5 multiples just to be safe. So I'll do 5 this time. 3 times 5 is 15. Now, if you didn't have these memorized, that's okay. You could do tally marks. 3s are easy to just count by 3s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. However you want to do it. You can do tally marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I did 3 times 1 is 3. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. This might seem like a lot of work. It's really not. I did it very quickly. But the other good thing is the more that you practice this, the faster it gets. And then it starts to become automatic where you don't have to stop and write this down. You can kind of just do it mentally in your head. Okay, now I'm going to do the multiples of 6 because 6 was my other denominator. Okay, so going back to this sheet, right, I had a denominator of 3 and a denominator of 6, and that's why I'm finding there goes the dog. Sorry, they'll be done in a second. I'm not going to stop the video because they'll calm down here in a second. All right, so I'm going to go back and list my multiples of 6. Again, doing 6 times 1. And if you don't remember or don't have that memorized, again, count by 6s or make yourself a 100s number chart or do tally marks. Okay, so I know that we've shown you in school, in class, different ways of finding those multiples, even if you don't have them memorized. Okay, so I'm going to do 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. Okay, I can do 5, and I will just for the sake as an example, but you may already see the lowest common multiple. 6 times 4 is 24. And 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, so I've done the multiples of 6 now. 6 times 1, 6 times 2, 6 times 3, 6 times 4, 6 times 5. Okay, but my lowest common multiple, and you've probably already seen this, I want to find the smallest number that they have that is the same. So I have a 6, and I have a 6. And usually I take my smallest denominator, which in this case is 3, and I just kind of go down the list. Is there a 3 here? No. Is there a 6 here? Yep, that's the one they have in common. So my lowest common multiple between 3 and 6 is 6. So that is going to be my common denominator. Lowest common multiple is 6. You're right. Okay, so I'm going to erase this, and now I'm going to go back to the example on our worksheet. So if I make an arrow, go back here, they changed 1/3 into 2/6 because we know that 6 is the lowest common multiple, so it's going to be the lowest common denominator. And they multiplied 3 times 2 to get 6. And they did 1 times 2 to get 2. All right, I know that's a little tight right there, but remember that we can multiply the numerator and denominator, top number and bottom number of a fraction by any number, and we still get an equivalent fraction. All right. So they've changed 1/3 into 2/6. 1/6 they don't need to change, so that'll just stay 1/6. And now we can add. Okay, because we have the same denominators. Now remember, when you're adding or subtracting fractions, you must have the same number as the denominator, and the denominator does not change. We don't add or subtract the denominator. So they have a 6 here, 6 here, 6 here, 6 here, 6 here, 6 here. Okay, and then the numerator, we're going to add 2 plus 1 is 3. So 2 6 plus 1 6 is 3 6. But notice there's one more step, so they didn't stop there. 3 6 is not in simplest form. So if you were ever making a recipe or anything like that and you're trying to measure something, you'll never see a recipe that says 3/6 of a cup because that's not in simplest form. So we know that there is a common factor, a factor being a number that can divide into 3, that can also divide into 6. So if we divide 3 by 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and 6 divided by 3 is 2. So back to my original problem, 1/3 plus 1/6 is actually equal to 1/2. But you cannot find that answer until you find equivalent fractions and get a common denominator. And then we have to simplify at the end. So there's a few steps to this, not hard steps, just it's a process. So you kind of have to go through the process. There's not really any shortcuts. So I'm going to do another one, letter A here as an example on the paper. And then I'll do a subtraction one as an example as well. And then I'll assign some problems for you to do independently, okay? All right, so let's try one together as an example. I'm going to do A, which is 2/12 plus 4/6. So 2/12 plus 4/6. Here's my paper. I'll change the color. Okay. And this is why, even if you see fractions where they're written horizontally, meaning they're going across, I still want you to do them vertically, up and down, because when we're finding that equivalent fraction, it's a lot easier if you're doing it vertically. So we're going to do 2/12 plus 1/6. And the first thing when adding fractions, we have to look at our denominators, and we see they are not the same. We do not have like denominators, so we cannot add them yet. I'm going to need to change them into fractions that have the same denominator without changing the value of the fraction. That's why we call them equivalent fractions. All right, so I'm going to list the multiples of 6 and 12. Multiples of 6, I just put the smallest one on top just out of habit. I could do the 12 first. It doesn't really matter. I like to put the smallest one on top. So I'm going to start with 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. And like I said, I usually do list 4 or 5 multiples. It's not always necessary to list that many. You may see the common multiple, the lowest common multiple before listing that many. All right, I'll list 4. All right, I can list the multiples of 12. 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. And 12 times 4 is 48. Okay. 6 and 12 have a lot of common multiples, but we want to try to find the lowest one because that makes simplifying at the end a lot easier. So I could have picked 24, for example, but that's not the lowest, so that means we would have more simplifying to do at the end. So I'm going to start with the lowest common multiple, which is 12. So my lowest common multiple of 6 and 12 is 12. And really, I should have put some more space here so that I had more room here, but I'm going to just erase that for right now. Okay, so I'm going to change 2 12ths plus 1 6 into 2 fractions with a denominator of 12. That's 12. This is 12. And I'm adding. Okay, so 2 12ths. Well, I really don't need to change that, right? This is a 12, this is a 12. So the numerator is going to stay a 2 because 2 12ths is equal to 2 12ths. What about 1 6? Well, I have to ask myself 6 times what number gives me 12? Well, 6 times 2 is 12. And so I need to do the same thing in my numerator, multiply times 2, to keep these fractions equivalent. So 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so I changed 1 6 into 2 12ths, and now I can add. Remember, same denominator, same denominator, same denominator. I'm not going to add the denominators, I just keep it the same, 12, 12, 12. And if I add my numerators, 2 plus 2 is 4. So I get 4 12ths. Now with fractions, most of the time you're going to need to simplify that fraction when you're adding or subtracting. That your answer will not be in simplest form. So this is not in simplest form, meaning that I can simplify it because there's a common factor, a number that can be divided into 4, a whole number, and another, the same whole number can be divided into 12. So what number goes into 4 that also goes into 12? Well, the biggest, we want the greatest common factor. The biggest common factor would be 4. 4 can be divided into 4 evenly, and 4 can be divided into 12 evenly. Oops. 4. So we want to divide by the same number in the numerator and the same number in the denominator. So 4 divided by 4 is 1, and 12 divided by 4 is 3. So my final answer is 1/3. Okay, so 2 12ths plus 1 6 is equal to 1/3. Can't get that answer. There's no shortcuts. You got to go through the steps, find the common denominator, add them, then simplify. Right? So I want you guys to try, and you can pause the video as you try, letter B, which is 4/8 plus 1/4. So I want you to pause the video, 4/8 plus 1/4, and work that out on a piece of paper. Same way that I'm doing it here, and then come back and check your answer. All right, so pause the video now. Or 8 plus 1/4. Ooh, that was messy. Okay. All right, so remember you're going to list your multiples of 4 and 8. You're going to find the lowest common multiple. Then you're going to make equivalent fractions with a like denominator, meaning the same number in the denominator. And then you can add and then simplify. Okay, let's go ahead and check your answer. So I would have listed my multiples of, actually I'm going to move that down a little bit. I'm going to list my multiples of 4. And like I said, the more you do this, you'll get faster with this, and you may not even have to continue listing the multiples. You may be able to do it mentally. But my multiples of 4 are 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. Okay, I'm going to stop there because hopefully you've seen the lowest common multiple. But my multiples of 8 are 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. All right, I'm going to stop there because I see there's an 8 here and an 8 here. So my lowest common multiple is 8. And so I want to use 8 as my common denominator. So that means I'm going to have an 8 here. And I'm going to have an 8 here so that I can add them. Okay. So here I have 4/8 and I have something over 8. Well, it's going to stay the same. 4/8 is equal to 4/8. So that one was easy. Here I have a 4 and here I have an 8. So I have to ask myself, 4 times what number is 8? Well, 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, 1 times 2. If I multiply times 2 in my denominator, then I have to do the same thing in the numerator. 1 times 2 is 2. Okay, so I've changed 1/4 into 2/8 so that I can add these two fractions. Okay, remember we never add or subtract the denominator of a fraction. So I've got an 8 here, 8 here, and I'll have an 8 down here. Same, right? That's an 8. It does not look like an 8. Okay. And now I can add my numerators. So I'm going to have 4 plus 2 is 6. So I get 6/8. And then I don't want to stop here though, because even though I've gotten an answer, I can see that this is not in simplest form. There's a number that can go into 6 that can also go into 8. And so I need to simplify that fraction. And the number is 2. 2s and 3s are pretty common when we're simplifying. I'm not saying it will always be a 2 or a 3, but that's a good place to start. Divide your numerator and denominator by 2 or by 3 and see what you get. So 6 divided by 2 is 3. Oh, I wrote the wrong thing. I'm sorry. That's bad mistake. I need to divide by the same number in the, same number in the numerator, same number in the denominator. Let me just rewrite that whole thing. Okay, so our answer here was 6/8. And I realize that's not in simplest form because I can divide the numerator and denominator by the same number, and that is 2. I can divide 6 by 2 and get a whole number. I can divide 8 by 2 and get a whole number. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. So when we say dividing, 8 divided by 2 means how many times can 2 go into 8 evenly? 4 times. Okay. With a division, we've done this before. If it's kind of the opposite of multiplication, there's a relationship between division and multiplication. So we've done triangles like fact families. You know, we have 8, 2, 4. Right? So 8 divided by 4 is 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 4 is 8. So that's one way to do it. Or we said do tally marks. Take the number I'm dividing by and just make groups of 2 and count up to 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. How many groups of 2 did I make? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. So 3/4 is my final answer to 4/8 plus 1/4 is 3/4. And that's how you would want your answer to be, and that's the answer you would see if this was an assessment, multiple choice, or anything like that. You're going to see 3/4 as an answer choice, not 6/8, because they're going to put fractions in simplest form. Okay, now I'm going to try 2 subtraction examples and then assign some for you to work on independently. All right, so let me clear this. I'm just going to make these up real quick. What color should we use? About orange. All right, so this is just an example of a subtraction fractions, unlike denominators, and we will have to find a common denominator. Okay, so let's just say I have 4/5. And I'm going to take away, let's say 1/2. Okay, so I have 4/5 of something and I need to take away half, but I cannot subtract the way it is. I do not have like denominators. Cannot just do 5 minus 2. That won't get you the right answer. So I'm going to, again, find a common denominator by listing the multiples. All right, so I'll start with 2 because I like to start with the smallest number. So 2 times 2, 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. Okay. So I usually start by listing 5 multiples. Sometimes you may have to do more. Sometimes you might do less. But sometimes you may have to do more than 5 multiples. But I usually start with 5 and just see where I'm at and then continue if I need to. So I'm going to list the multiples of 5. 2s and 5s are easy because we're all pretty good at counting by 2s and 5s. So 5 times 1 is 5. 10. 15. 20. I mean, I could keep going, but maybe by now you've already seen the common multiple, the lowest common multiple. So I usually start in the top row. 2s, do I have any 2s? No. 4, do I have, no 4, 6. No 6s. 8. No. 10. Yep, 10 it is. Okay, so my lowest common multiple is 10, and that's also going to be my common denominator. So up here, I'm going to change 4/5 into something over 10, and I'm going to change 1/2 into something over 10. And then I can subtract them. Okay. So I have to figure out these numerators, though, making sure that I'm making equivalent fractions. So I want a fraction equal to 4/5, but I want it to have a denominator of 10. So I can subtract. So I have to ask myself, 5 times what number is 10? Well, if I look down here, 5 times 1, 5 times 2. So 5 times 2. Now, to keep these two fractions equal, I have to multiply the same thing in the numerator, times 2. So 4 times 2 is 8. So 4/5 is equal to 8/10. Now, my second fraction, I have to do the same thing. I'm changing 1/2 into something over 10. But I have to ask myself, 2 times what number would be 10? 2 times 1, 2 times 2, 2 times 3, 2 times 4, 2 times 5. Okay, so if I multiply times 5 in my denominator, I have to multiply times 5 in the numerator. And 1 times 5 is 5. So 5/10 is equal to 1/2. 8/10 is equal to 4/5. But now I have same denominators I can subtract. So before I subtract, though, I'm going to just go ahead and bring down that denominator, same, so I don't forget. Same. And I can subtract now. My numerator is 8 minus 5 is 3. So I get 3/10. So 4/5 minus 1/2 is 3/10. Now I have to ask myself, is this in simplest form? Is that my final answer, or do I need to simplify? Is there a number a factor that can be divided into 3, and it can also be divided into 10? A common factor, the same number? And the answer is no. The only number that can go into 3 evenly that also goes into 10 is the number 1. And if we divide by 1, we're still going to get 3/10. I mean, you can do it, but it's kind of an unnecessary step. So the only common factor they have is the number 1. So I really don't need to simplify this fraction. 3/10 is in simplest form. But if I did 3 divided by 1, I'd get 3. And 10 divided by 1 is 10. So 3/10 is my fraction in simplest form. Okay. And that's it. All right, we'll try one more subtraction. Then I'm going to stop the video. I want you to try this one independently, and then we'll kind of check it after you're finished to see how you did. And then I'm going to assign some work for you to do independently. And then we'll have about an hour and 15 minutes till our Zoom chat. Or by then it might be an hour. Okay, so here's another example. Pick a different color. Let's do burgundy. Okay, so here's another brown. I don't know, that's burgundy, I guess. Example. Okay, I'm going to do 2/3 is my top fraction. And I'm going to subtract, so minus 1/4. And this is a good word to point out right now. A lot of times when you're doing like a practical problem, meaning a word problem, the word you'll see for subtraction a lot of times is the difference. So I'm going to write that up here. I'm finding the difference between 2/3 and 1/4. Difference means to do what? What operation? To subtract. Okay. So find the difference between 2/3 and 1/4. Go ahead and pause the video now, get your answer, and then we can come back and check it. Okay. So the first step is to list the common multiples because we see that we have different denominators, unlike denominators. And we're going to need to change these fractions so that they have like denominators. I would never, ever, 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 not if I want to get the right answer, I'm not going to do 2 minus 1 and 3 minus 4. First of all, 3 is smaller than 4, so that's a whole different thing. Never subtract or add the denominators. We got to find like denominators. So I'm going to list my multiples. List the multiples of 3. I count by 3s. 3 times 1. 3 times 2. 3 times 3. 3 times 4. 3 times 5. That's a 12. Whoops. 3 times 5 is 15. Okay. I usually do 4 or 5 to start. If you need more, then you can continue the list of multiples. Now my 4s. 4 times 1. 4 times 2. 4 times 3. 4 times 4. Okay. I could go to 4 times 5, which is 20. But you may see by now the lowest common multiple. So I can start in my smallest number. Do I have any 3s? No. Do I have any 6s down here? No. Do I have any 9s? No. Do I have any 12s? Yes. So 12 is my lowest common multiple. All right. So I have a 12 here, and I have a 12 here. Now I need to find that numerator because I'm trying to find the difference between 2/3 and 1/4. Difference means subtract. So I have to ask myself, because I need to make these fractions still equivalent. I just can't pick any random numerator to go over 12. So I have to ask myself, 3 times what number makes 12? Well, you can do tally marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 3 times 4 makes 12. So I have to do the same thing in my numerator. 2 times 4 is 8. So 8/12 is equal to 2/3. Down here, I have to say 4 times what number makes 12. Again, you can do tally marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, 4 times 3 makes 12. So I'll do the same thing in my numerator. 1 times 3 is 3. All right, 3/12 is equal to 1/4. And remember, my operation is subtracting. I'm finding the difference. I won't subtract the denominators. Same, same, same. I'm going to bring down my 12. But I will subtract my numerators. So 8 minus 3 is 5. And then my last step is to make sure that this fraction is in simplest form. So I have to ask myself, is there a common factor, a number, a whole number that can divide evenly into 5 that also divides evenly into 12? And the answer is no, not really. The only common factor is 1. And if you divide by 1, you're still going to get 5/12. So this answer is in simplest form. 5/12 is my final answer. Don't need to simplify. Okay, so we've done a couple of examples of adding fractions with unlike denominators. We've done a couple of examples of subtracting fractions, finding the difference of fractions with unlike denominators. And so now I'm going to assign some problems for you to practice. If you get stuck, go back and look at our examples, rewatch the video, go through the steps, and repeat the steps on your problem. So you're going to do the exact same thing that I've done here, just with different numbers on your problem. If you get stuck on the multiplication or the division, do tally marks. Okay, we can do tally marks to help us find answers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we can see that groups of 4, and if I do that 3 times, I get 12 tally marks. So we call that a fact family, where there's a relationship between 12 or 3 and 4. Okay, so none of these numbers are so big that we can't do tally marks. It's very quick, very easy. We can find our multiplication and division facts. And the more we practice, I'm going to pause the video now, guys, because my dogs are going crazy. So we will, I'll assign some practice for you guys to practice on your own, and then I'll see you at our Zoom chat in about an hour, okay? See you in a little bit. Bye, guys.